So here we are looking at our curriculum conceptual through lines once again, and now we're going to go through a prioritizing process. So we've already highlighted those things that lead directly into grade 7. So we're thinking we're grade 6 teachers, and we've already looked at, well, what leads into grade 7. So now we're going to prioritize those, and we're going to color code them according to the little sign up in the top left-hand corner of our document. Priority 1 is the highest level. These are the things that we're going to pause and ensure kids understand to the best of our ability before we move on. The priority 2, those things are pretty high priority. We want to ensure that we are spending some time there this year. And our gray priority 3 are those things that we say, you know what, we might have a play day, we might explore, and we then have to move on, because unfortunately, when you have limited time and resources, you have to spend time on the things that are number 1 priority. So we're back to the beginning of our curricular through lines. So Megan, I'm noticing that we have, we didn't highlight the place value. So what's up with that?
We didn't. So if you look beyond grade 6, they're not expected to go any greater than 1 million. So the numbers that they will be working on from now on will all be smaller than 1 million. So for example, if we are solving for X, working with patterns and relations, those numbers are all going to be probably less than 100. So we are not asking them to solve for things in the hundreds of thousands. So it is important. Place value is infused through all of the math curriculum, but the numbers will be much more targeted. So they won't be asked to expand notation, write in written notation. So those specific skills that they would learn with that outcome are priority 3 compared to the foundational skill of understanding.
Right. So when I think about the math that I would have done in high school, for instance, those numbers were generally less than 1,000 that I would have been interacting, that kids would have been interacting with. And when you think about the place value concept under 1,000, I think that's about grade 3. And so they've already been they've been practicing that. So place value itself is important. They don't necessarily use numbers beyond 1 million. Now, until you get to scientific notation, that starts happening in about grade 9. So certainly a few years past grade 6. And then what about this one around First Nations and Métis past, present, how we use numbers, or how people traditionally use numbers. So we hadn't highlighted that one either. So what are your thoughts on that one?
So that one is not designed to be a standalone outcome. It is designed to be infused throughout the rest of the outcome. So it should be something that is regularly infused. So it's not that it's not a priority, because it definitely is. It just is something that will be done through all the other outcomes. So we can highlight that one gray.
Right. So as an example, when I've been working with our other collaborator, Sharon Anaquat, we're looking at how communities distribute berries for ceremony. That would be an example of factors and multiples. How do you determine how many berries you need to pick, how many packages of berries, who gets what? That's a factors and multiples question. So that would be an example of how we might infuse First Nations concepts or ideas and context into our mathematics. So here we have yellow. So yellow is all of everything we've said is a priority because it leads into 7. Now we're going to say, is it a green, highest priority, or yellow? So when I think about factors and multiples, Megan, what are your thoughts? Is that a green or is that a yellow?
To me, that's a green, because the idea of factors and multiples are seen throughout the curriculum. So they will need that when they are finding lowest common denominators, when they work in grade 7 and they are using divisibility strategies. So those are things that they for sure have to understand in order for them to find success in some of the other outcomes and feel confident in some of the other outcomes.
And not just divisibility rules, but as you said, so many other things around fractions and that kind of thing. So we're going to highlight that one as green. This is where you're going to spend a good chunk of your time if you haven't already done so between now and the end of the year. What about integers? What do you think about integers? Would they stay yellow or would those go green?
So Integers are super important. You start to see them through everything and in multiple subject areas in high school. However, in grade 6, you're pretty much just introducing the idea of integers. You're not really doing a whole lot with it. So super important. But when you hit grade 7 and 8, that's when you start to do things with integers. So adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing. So I would say that that's a yellow. Definitely some time to be spent on it, but knowing that more time will be spent in following years on that concept.
And I remember when I taught grade 7 math, I would have gone all the way back to what is an integer in grade 7. And so I would be ensuring understanding integers before I added them in grade 7. And so that's why I absolutely agree that that would stay as a yellow. So now what we've done is we've gone through the rest of what we had said yellow, and we turned some of them green. So you'll notice that fractions, improper and mixed fractions, #1 priority, whereas we said percent is a yellow priority. So we're going to spend more time on fractions and decimal work in grade 6 than we would in percentages. And some of our conversation around that was that, again, in grade 7, because they're going to be working on percentages between 1 and 100%, they are actually going to basically be talking about what are percentages there again. So that's why we feel like it could be just a yellow priority in my grade 6 year that I'm teaching here. Now, if you go down, you'll notice that grade 6, the patterns and relations are all highest priority, including the Cartesian plane, because we popped that up from shape and space to cluster it there, because grade 6 really is the beginning foundation, if you will. Yes, it's introduced in grade 5, but in terms of that symbolic and kind of different connections together, grade 6 is really where that starts happening. So green priority for all of that. Now, we did say angles, while they do absolutely lead into that grade 7, chances are, again, in grade 7, if I'm teaching that, I'm going all the way back to how do you measure and draw an angle. So we felt that we could make that a yellow priority. And then we had the polygons we talked about before. As now, here's an interesting one. We did say that some pieces of this outcome were the priority in terms of leading into the grade 7. And so we then said, oh, but they're really high priority, because that is how I would teach triangles, parallelograms, and circles, is based on the area of a rectangle. Now, again, they need to know the difference between perimeter area and volume in grade 6, but then when they're calculating, the highest priority is on the area of a rectangle. So we just went through and we continued on looking at, are things highest priority, medium priority, first, second, and third priority, and that's what we did to color code. Now, it's interesting because your opinion might be different than mine, it might be different than Megan's, and that is just fine. Your priority list is your priority list, and that's actually why, even if you're teaching grade 6, you're going to go through this exercise and you might actually have different colors on your document, and that's just great. Anything to add to that, Megan?
Nope, I think that's great.